there is an image older than almost any other the human soul has made. A serpent curled into a perfect circle, devouring its own tail. It looks, at first glance, like the picture of something destroying itself, a creature locked in the act of its own undoing. It is, in truth, the picture of a whole and self-renewing soul, and it is where this entire long journey has been quietly leading from the very first word all along. Tonight, Jom is going to show you what that ancient circle really means, because it gathers up everything he has shown you, the shadow and the self, the poison that is also the cure, the monster that becomes food, the despised force that completes you, all of it into one final image of what a whole human being actually is. And once you see it, you will understand that becoming whole was never about reaching some finished, perfect state. It was about becoming a circle that renews itself forever from within, lacking nothing, depending on nothing, complete. Let him show you the image first, because it has haunted the human imagination for thousands of years. In the oldest books of the Seekers, drawn and redrawn across the centuries, there appears a serpent, or sometimes a dragon, bent around into a complete circle, its mouth closed on its own tail, swallowing itself without end. It is one of the very oldest symbols human beings have ever made. And like the other great images Jung has shown you, this one did not belong to any single people or any single age. It appears again and again across cultures that never met, scratched into ancient stone, painted in old manuscripts, carried in the dreams and visions of people who had never seen it before. The same circle, the same self-devouring serpent, rising independently from the human depths in age after age, place after place. And you know by now what that means. When an image appears everywhere, with no one passing it from hand to hand, it is not a borrowed idea. It is something the soul itself produces, a shape built into the very structure of the human depths, pressed up into consciousness whenever a person reaches, knowingly or not, for the picture of a complete and self-renewing whole. The Ouroboros is not a clever invention. It is a memory the soul carries of its own deepest nature, and to the eye that does not understand it, it looks like an image of self-destruction, a creature consuming itself down to nothing, an emblem of a thing at war with itself. But it meant the exact opposite of that. To the Seekers, this self-devouring serpent was the supreme image of wholeness, of a totality that is complete in itself, that sustains itself, that contains everything it needs and depends on nothing outside its own round. Now look closely at what the serpent is actually doing, because the whole secret is right there in the shape. Its head, which devours, and its tail, which is devoured, are the same serpent. The destroyer and the destroyed are one single creature. It is, at once, the thing that eats and the thing that is eaten, its own beginning and its own end. It is its own poison and its own medicine, its own death and its own birth. In that one closed circle, the serpent holds together both poles of every opposite Jung has shown you, and reveals them, finally, not as two enemies at war, but as a single thing curved around to meet itself. And every opposite you have wrestled with on this long road is held in that same closing circle. The ego and the self, which seem so opposed, are the two ends of one serpent. The light you reach for and the shadow you flee are the head and the tail of a single creature. The poison in your depths and the medicine you longed for are one substance, curved around to meet itself. The monster that could devour you and the nourishment that could feed you are the same beast seen from two sides of the circle. Everything that ever tore you in two, every war between a higher and a lower in yourself, is revealed in this image as a single thing bent around until its opposite ends touch. That is what wholeness finally is. Not the victory of one side over the other, not the amputation of the dark to save the light, but the closing of the circle until the two ends you thought were enemies are seen to be one unbroken line. If you have followed this whole long road, through the shadow and the self and the serpent and the monsters, and you sense that all of it has been pointing towards some final unity you cannot quite name, then stay with Jung, because this is that unity, and He is about to put it into your hands. Subscribe and stay with Him, because this is the last and largest image in the whole journey, the picture of what you are becoming. Here is what this circle truly is. It is the picture of where the entire journey leads. Think back over everything. The shadow which you had to take back as your own. The poison in your depths which turned out to be your medicine. The monsters of feeling and appetite which you were meant not to slay but to consume. The despised fourth which completed the circle of your wholeness. Every single step has been the same motion, the bringing together of an opposite, the joining of two things that seemed at war into one larger thing. And the self-devouring serpent is the end of that long road, the image of a self that has taken in all of its opposites, that holds its own darkness and its own light, its own poison and its own cure, its own depths and its own hue, its own depths and its own heights, together in one complete and self-sustaining round. And now Jung comes to the strangest part, the eating of its own tail, which is the deepest meaning of all. It means that the whole self renews itself out of its own substance. The person who has come full circle no longer has to feed endlessly on the outer world to find a sense of life and meaning, grasping at the next achievement, the next approval, the next possession, to fill an emptiness that never stays full. They renew themselves from within, from their own depths, from their own experience taken in and digested and made new again. They feed in a sense on themselves, drawing their renewal from their own inner source, round and round, self-sustaining, no longer dependent on the world to keep handing them a reason to be alive. And you have surely seen the difference between these two ways of living in others and perhaps in yourself. There is the person who must be fed constantly from outside, who needs the next success, the next bit of praise, the next acquisition, the next person's approval, just to feel real for another day, and who falls into emptiness the moment the supply runs dry. Their sense of life comes entirely from beyond them, and so they are never at rest, always reaching, always hungry, a vessel with a hole in the bottom that no amount of pouring can fill. And then there is the rarer person who has come round the circle, who carries their own source of renewal inside them, who can sit alone in a quiet room and still feel the deep current of life moving within, because it does not depend on anything the world is or is not giving them at that moment. That self-sufficiency is not coldness, and it is not a turning away from the world. It is the deep, settled fullness of a soul that has become a complete circle and no longer leaks. And the circle never closes into a dead, finished thing, because the renewal never stops. This is the part people most misunderstand about becoming whole. You do not become whole once and then stand there, finished and complete, like a statue in a museum. You become whole, the way the serpent is whole, by continually dying to an old self and being reborn out of your own depths, the same circle turning again and again for as long as you live. Remember the serpent that sheds its skin. This is that same truth, made eternal. Each ending you pass through feeds a new beginning. Each death of an old self becomes the birth of a truer one. The death and the birth are not two separate events that happen to you. They are one single motion, the serpent's mouth forever meeting its own tail, the end forever becoming the beginning. And do not imagine this means you simply go round and round in the same place, repeating yourself forever and getting nowhere. The circle of renewal is not a flat ring you are trapped on. It is more like a spiral, the same essential turning, death into rebirth, into death, into rebirth. But each time at a greater depth, each time taking in more, integrating more, becoming more whole than the round before. You will meet the same shadow again, but you will meet it more deeply and take in more of it. You will die to an old self again, but it will be a truer self that dies and a truer one that is born. The motion is circular, yes, the same eternal turning of ending into beginning, but the direction is downward and inward into ever greater depth. You are not running in place, you are descending, by way of the circle, toward the very center of yourself. Beside this image, the old seekers wrote a single short phrase, 3 words that held their whole philosophy: the one, the all, the all. They meant that the entire universe of opposites is contained within this one self-renewing round, that you do not need to go searching outside yourself for the missing piece, because the complete self already holds both poles of everything: devourer, death and life, poison and cure, darkness and light, gathered into one circle that feeds and renews itself with its hideout. The one is the all. The whole is already here, curved around to touch itself, lacking nothing. And Jung wants to be careful that you do not mistake what this image is saying, because in our literal-minded age it is easy to misread. The serpent eating itself is not an image of a soul turned against itself, consuming itself in some grim act of self-destruction. It is the very opposite. The eating is not violence. It is renewal, the taking of one's own past, one's own experience, one's own endings, back in as nourishment for what comes next. Nor does it mean you withdraw from the world and feed only on yourself in some lonely isolation. A whole person, secure in their own inner source, is freer to love the world and other people than the hungry, leaking soul ever was, because they come to the world to share their fullness, not to beg it to fill their emptiness. The self-renewing circle does not close you off from life. It is what finally makes you able to meet life without drowning in it and feel the deep peace that is waiting in this image at the very end of the long road, because this is the gift it offers you. It means the resources for your own renewal are already inside you, held in the circle of your own depths. You do not have to reach outside yourself for the thing that will finally complete you, because there is no missing piece out there. The whole, once you have integrated it, renews itself endlessly from its own substance. The opposites you spent your entire life at war with, the light and the dark, the strength and the weakness, the spirit and the body, are revealed at the last to have been all along a single serpent, one self, one unbroken circle, turning and renewing itself forever. So this is the image to carry with you as the close of this whole journey, and it changes the question you have been asking your whole life. You are not a broken collection of warring parts to be hammered into some flawless, perfect shape. And you are not a lonely fragment that must reach forever outside itself to feel complete. You are at your very depths, a single self-renewing whole, already capable of taking in every opposite, already able to die and be reborn out of your own substance, round and round, lacking nothing. The serpent devouring its own tail is not destroying itself at all. It is the picture of a soul that has become whole and that renews itself endlessly from within. And so this is the place where the whole long teaching comes to rest. Everything Jung has shown you, every figure and every symbol, the watcher behind your thoughts, the shadow you had to own, the inner woman and the inner man, the self at the center, the blind god of the ego, the fish in the deep, the spark, the fallen wisdom, the monsters, the misting forth, the spirit hidden in matter, all of it was always pointing at this one thing, at the making of a whole human being, a complete circle, a self that holds all its opposites together and renews itself out of its own depths. That was the destination from the very first word, though you could not have seen it then. Every separate teaching was one arc of this single circle, and now, at the end, the arcs close into the round they always belonged to. This is what the whole journey was for, to bring you here to the closed and turning circle of your own wholeness. So Jung leaves you with the question that the whole journey has been circling toward from the very first word. You have spent your life believing that wholeness was something out ahead of you, a finished and perfect state you might one day reach if you could only fix every broken part of yourself. But what if wholeness was never a destination at all, but a circle, the endless taking in of your own opposites and the endless renewing of yourself from your own depths? And what if you already hold, curled inside you, everything the whole journey was ever reaching for? If tonight you understood that you are not moving toward wholeness, but learning to live within it, then write 3 words in the comments. Write the one, all, Jung wants to know how many of you have come the whole long way around the circle and arrived, at last, back at the center where it all began. And so we arrive back where we began, at the self, the center of everything, which you first met at the start of this long road. The circle has closed. But a closing circle is also an opening one, because the serpent's mouth meeting its tail is not an ending. It is a beginning, taken up again. So when you are ready, begin once more and travel the circle again, deeper this time, because the journey into your own wholeness is the one road that never truly ends and would not be worth taking if it did.